Hello and welcome to Maki's Closet. For today's tutorial, I'll be sharing with you a requested video on how to draft a simple stylish blouse. So this video was actually inspired by Vicky James, and if it's your first time viewing my channel, please hit on the subscribe button. So I've gone ahead to mark out my vertical measurement, which is my shoulder to bust, shoulder to under bust, shoulder to waistline, and my top length, which is 21 inches. So next I'm going to mark my neckline of 3 by 4 inches. So sorry, while recording I didn't notice the light was too bright, so I'll just go ahead and mark the 3 by 4 inches neckline, and I'm going to outline it this way and go ahead to use my marker to mark it out. So after I'm done marking out, the next step is to mark my shoulder, and I'll mark my shoulder divided by 2, which is 7 inches, and I'll add half because I'm attaching sleeve to the dress. Come down by 1 inch, and I'm going to connect my shoulder slope or shoulder slant, and I'm going to go ahead to use my marker to outline it. The next step I'm going to take is to get my chest line, and to get your chest line is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches, and I'm going to mark mine, which is 7 inches, and I'm going to place and draw a straight line at my chest line. So after I'm done marking this, whatever I have on my shoulder, I'm going to mark it, which is 7.5, and I'm going to place my ruler, and I'm going to go ahead to draw a straight line. So now I'm going to divide what I have here into 2. Dividing it into 2, I'll fold my tape, and I'm going to have 3.5, and I'm going to come in by ½ inch, and from that point I'm going to go ahead at my chest line and mark my bust circumference divided by 4, which is 8.3. I'm going to place my French curve, connect down to the lower part, and I'm going to go ahead to take it up, and I'll connect it to the shoulder line. So this is what I have, and I'm going to go ahead to use my marker, and I'm going to outline it. So after I'm done doing this right now, the next step I'm going to take is to mark my dart, and to mark that I'm going to place my tape, mark my shoulder to bust line plus 1 inch. From that shoulder to bust line plus 1 inch, I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2. So from that point, I'm going to go ahead to place my ruler, and I'm going to draw a straight line connecting it. So now I'm going to place my tape, mark ½ inch at both sides of my waistline, and I'm going to connect it from that my shoulder to bust line plus 1 inch I came down from, down to the waistline, and from the waistline I'm going to connect it down to my top length. So on the other side also, I'm going to place my ruler, and I'm going to repeat the same process, and from the waistline I'm going to take it down to the top length. Sorry, my pattern is not showing very well. I didn't know that the lightning was too much when I was actually recording, so I'm just going to go ahead and continue and outline my dart. So now I want to mark my body circumference. I'm going to place my tape, and I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4, add my sewing allowance, measure my under bust circumference, mark that, and measure the dart intake I have there, replace my sewing allowance, add my sewing allowance, sorry, mark my waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace it, and add my sewing allowance. So at the top length I'll be marking my hip circumference divided by 4, and I'll just go ahead to mark my sewing allowance. So why I did that is because my top length is 21 inches and is close to my hip circumference, to my hip length, sorry. So I'm just going to go ahead to connect it, and I'm going to use my marker to outline it so that it's going to be very visible. So on this part of my top, I'm just going to go up by 1 inch, and I'm going to connect it down to the blouse pattern this way. So after I'm done doing this, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to extend the lines down to the end. So after now, I'm going to place my tape and come down by 4 inches. but when you're drafting yours, please go down by 5 inches or 6. 4 might be too short for you, and from there I'm going to connect it down to that 4 inches at the center, and I'm going to go ahead to connect this way. So after I'm done connecting on this side, we'll be going down on this other side. But before I do that, I'm just going to go ahead to cut out this pattern so that it will be easier for me to draft out the other side of this dress. So after I'm done cutting out, I'm going to open up my pattern this way. So after opening up my pattern, the next thing I'm going to do is to extend all my lines down to the other side, which is my waistline, my top line first, my waistline, my under bust line. So I'll go ahead, extend the bust line and the chest line, and the next thing I'll do is just go ahead and mark out the same dots I marked on this part. So now I'm going to place my tape and mark about 2.5 inches. So if you're using more than 5 to 6 inches, you're going to go ahead and use 3 inches. So from here, I'm just going to trace it down to the end, and I'm going to draw a line to connect it. So after I'm done connecting, this is what I have on this part, and right now you're going to go ahead to extend this your line down to the chest line. So I'll just go ahead and place my ruler and extend my line, and from there I'm going to place my tape at the armhole side, and I will mark about 5 inches down, and from that 5 inches I'm going to go ahead to connect it down to that line at my chest line. So after I'm done marking this, at this point you notice this part is a bit higher, so I'm going to go ahead, replace my tape, and I'll mark 3.5 inches, and from that point I'm going to connect it back to the chest line on this part, and I'm going to follow that dot that I made, and I'm going to connect this way. So right, the next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead to extend my darts. So I'll extend the other darts down to the lower part this way, and on the upper part also I'm going to extend. But before I go ahead and extend, I'm going to go ahead to cut out the excess I have on this pattern. So for this pattern, if you're making use of a bust dart, go ahead and do that, and just make sure that you also measure your back, because when you're making use of your bust dart, your front measurement and your back measurement is not the same. So just like I extended the dart on the other side, I'm going to go ahead to extend this dart down to that part on top of my chest line. So I'm just going to place this rule and I'm going to connect. So now I'm just going to go ahead and I will cut out the dart, because we have already gone ahead to replace it. So after I'm done cutting out my darts, the next step I will make dots to indicate the button on that side of the dress. So remember, this is just a drafting pattern, and I'm going to go ahead to cut the upper part. So if you're going to sew this pattern, please don't forget to add 1/2 inch on the joining allowance on the top and by the sides of the pattern, because you're going to be joining it back together. So after this, I'm done drafting the front, and the next step we're going to take right now is to go ahead to draft the back pattern. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please hit on the subscribe button. So going down to the back pattern, I've gone ahead to mark out all my vertical measurements just like I did for the front, and I added my zipper allowance in front. So what I'll go ahead to do right now is to outline my pattern, and I'm going to fold in my zipper so that you'll not be confused where I'm going to start my measurement. So all my measurement is starting immediately after the zipper line, so that's why I'm folding it in this way. So now we are going to start, and I'm going to place my tape and mark my shoulder to bust, which is 9 inches plus 1 inch, making it 10. And I'll place my tape and I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2, which is 3.5, and I'm going to place my ruler, and I'm going to go ahead to draw a straight line connecting down to my waist point. and down to my top length. So at my waist length, I'm going to mark ½ inch at both sides, connect it from the upper part down to my waistline, and I'll do so at the other side. And after that, I'm going to connect it down to my top length, and I'm going to take it down this way. So the next step, I'll be inserting my body circumference at the under bust. At the bust, I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4, add my sewing allowance. At the under bust, measure my under bust circumference, measure the dart intake, and replace the sewing allowance. So I'll do the same also at the waistline. So next, I'm going to measure my hip circumference divided by 4 plus half and mark. So I'll just extend it down and down to my bust, down to my under bust circumference. So after this, I'm just going to go ahead to cut out my pattern. So when I was drafting, I forgot to go up by 1 inch, just like I did at the waistline of the pattern in front. So when you're doing yours, please don't forget to go up by 1 inch at the top length of this particular pattern. So I'll just go ahead and cut out all my pattern, and this is what I have for the back pattern after I'm done cutting. And I'm going to go ahead to bring out the zipper allowance. Now I'm going to work on the zipper allowance. I'll mark ½ inch, place my ruler, and I'm going to go ahead to connect it upwards. So now you're getting rid of the bulginess at the back of the dress. And what you're going to do next is to go ahead and cut out this part. So with that, we are done with today's tutorial. Please join us in our next video, and if you haven't yet subscribed, please hit on the subscribe button. Thanks.